In this world filled with magic, there's a seemingly ordinary town that hides a huge secret. Chapter 28, The Hefty Price of Magic Fiona. As we drove through the winter landscape, I turned to Rowan, curiosity getting the better of me. How will Lucas know when we've arrived? Before Rowan could answer, Viona's voice piped up from the back seat. Don't worry. He'll know when to come to the pub. Kat, her nervousness palpable, leaned forward. Are you sure he's fine with all this? Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her insecurity. I'm not only a stranger, but the daughter of a dangerous woman. She slumped back, a groan escaping her lips. Rowan's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, his gaze settling on Kat. Lucas wouldn't have told me where to meet him. Kat, if he was up for the task. Try not to worry, lass. His tone was reassuring, but I could sense the underlying tension. This being a fairy princess seems like a horrible dream, Kat muttered, frustration evident in her voice. I mean, if I'm the daughter of this mighty fairy queen, where are my powers? How come I never felt different? I twisted in my seat to see Viona reach out, her hand enveloping Kat's in a comforting gesture. If I had to guess, the witch began, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. I would bet it has a lot to do with that rat bastard. Quinn, children are a product of their upbringing and humans raised you. Not to mention that sick fuck. Quinn, removing your wings. Viona's face contorted with disgust at the mention of Quinn. I nodded, offering Kat a sympathetic smile as I processed this information. The same questions about my own powers nagged at me. If we are successful at keeping Kat hidden, how will we ever find out who's helping my father with sex flex? How will we get Kyra back? Queen Salustria was clear that she wouldn't assist us unless we revealed Kat's whereabouts. As long as she has the entire court on lockdown, there's no chance another fairy will help us. You guys said they are loyal to their queen. Rowan's hand found mine, his touch warm and reassuring despite the chill in the air. Just like any rook, he began, eyes fixed on the snowy road ahead. There's always a rebellious few or group who aren't as loyal as they appear. He glanced at me, a small smile playing on his lips. Hes right. Rian chimed in from the back. If we could contact the right fairy, one with a grudge against the queen. Viona's gaze was fixed on the bleak winter landscape outside. She's such an evil bitch. I'm sure there are many fairies who despise her in secret. We agree on something. Wonders never cease, Rian announced, a hint of amusement in his voice. As we continued our journey through the snow-covered countryside, the weight of our mission hung heavy in the air. A fave Kat, Kyra, and countless others rested on our ability to navigate the treacherous waters of fairy politics and human cruelty. I couldn't help but wonder what challenges awaited us in Salcombe, and whether Lucas would truly have the answers we so desperately sought. It's a big if, Rowan said. Still, if we succeeded, we could gather enough concrete evidence and present it to the other races. The only way to stop Cormac Quinn is to have all the creatures of Primordial on our side. That would cause an all-out war, Viona stated. But it's the only way to stop Quinn. You'd like to know why this unknown fairy is so keen to keep sex flex on the market. I wonder if Quinn is blackmailing one of them. She turned from the window and exhaled a long sigh. That's a strong possibility. Make no mistake. It's blackmail, or there's something significant in it for the guilty party. Rian responded. The weather caused our drive to Salcombe to last almost 10 hours. Yet even in winter, the rugged beauty here captivated me. I peered out at the seaside village and imagined what it must look like during the spring and summer months. An urge to roll the window down and inhale the salty air was strong, but I refrained. Instead, I gazed at the stone cottages, the sea, the rocky landscape, grazing sheep, and lonely trees. The view left me mesmerized. Before long, Rowan stopped at the pub in the village called the Bitter Nightingale. We're here. Let's get a bite to eat while we wait. Viona sighed. Good. I'm famished, and my ass is numb. I never want to spend this long in a bloody vehicle ever again. You gonna fly back home on your broom? Rian snickered and hopped out of the SUV, stretching. Hilarious. Little wolf. She jumped out and threw him a glare accompanied by a smirk. Just remember I'm doing you guys. She advanced toward him, punching her finger with each word until she stood toe-to-toe with Rian. A favor. Vion A slammed her index finger into his chest twice, scowling up at him. I could have been here in seconds with the click of my fingers. She snapped them for effect. So why didn't you snap your little fingers? Ryan remained nose to nose with her, nostrils flaring and fists clenched at his sides. I tried not to chuckle at Vion's audacity. Ryan towered over her, but she had no fear. Vion A was an absolute badass, and had grown to like her a lot. I had a feeling that underneath her fierce exterior, and the vile words lay a wounded, delicate heart. Something was brewing between her and Rian. I just knew it. No way they spat that much vitriol at each other without an underlying reason. I wanted to ask Rian if they had some type of history, but feared his wrath. He seemed to take everything in stride unless it pertained to a certain fiery, tough, and gorgeous red-headed witch. Perhaps they had dated in the past. Yes, I was nosy and craving to know their backstory. I think after we eat, we should ask about renting rooms here. Rowan pointed to a row of 6 adjoining cottages beside the pub. Let's talk to Lucas first. Perhaps we can crash with him. Vi ate her gaze from Rian and glanced at Rowan. This looks like the perfect place to come and disappear, I said, pulling my coat tighter around me. You're cold. Let's get. Rowan placed his hand on the small of my back, leading me toward the door. We'll order something warm to drink and eat while waiting for Lucas. As soon as we entered the pub, it was evident that Lucas had been expecting our arrival. Only the barkeep and a tall, attractive man stood by the bar, his gaze fixed on the entrance. Rowan and Rian rushed to him, and I watched the bro hugs and several thumping pats to the back. I felt relief wash over me, noticing how kind Lucas appeared with his mouth stretched in a broad smile, reaching his honey-colored eyes. His chocolate brown hair was thick and wavy, almost touching his shoulders. Lucas was a looker with full lips, beautiful olive skin, and a buff yet slim build. Kat gripped my hand, and I heard her audible intake of breath and knew this could be a problem. Kat, I glared at her, frowning. I know what you're thinking, and while I understand, don't even think about seducing him. He has to be the most magnificent man Ivy ever laid eyes on. While she was speaking to me, her eyes stayed glued to Lucas. A still grinning Rowan approached us. Ladies, this is my beta and best friend, Lucas. Lucas glanced at me with a smile, but his eyes kept shifting to Kat, and he seemed anxious. You must be Fiona. I nodded, returning his smile, and shook his hand. Nice to meet you, Lucas. This is my best friend, Kat. He stared at Kat, and I watched his pupils dilate in Adam's apple bob as he swallowed. Oh shit, I thought. Looks like the feeling is mutual. Kat, he muttered, taking her hand. Or should I call you Princess A.I.L.? I've heard about you. His nostrils widened as he brought Kat's hand up to kiss her knuckles, but I noticed he also smelled her hand. Just fucking grand. I rolled my eyes. No way these two were not hitting the sheets at the first opportunity. Rowan cleared his throat, and Lucas dropped Kat's hand as if it burned him, and I saw the smallest trace of pink on his cheeks. Please call me Kat. She dropped her eyes to the floor, appearing timid. Kat was not shy. Quite the contrary. And you already know. Vion A. Rowan tilted his head toward the witch. Yes, we've met, Lucas said, his attention remaining on Kat. Rowan placed an order with the barkeep and turned to Lucas. Thank you for having us. No problem, Rowan. You know it'd do anything for you. Yes, but protecting Kat's incest princess ARAQIL could be dangerous. Rowan appeared to peer into Lucas's eyes. We can't risk her mother finding her, and I can't risk being found yet, either. Lucas lifted his brows. I want to return to the pack with my mate in tow to squelch any rumors. I allowed my foolish heart to lead me astray, and now I'm paying for it. He shook his head, looking ashamed. Lucas, what makes you think you'll find your mate in this one? Horse down. Vione asked, scoffing. I didn't, he said, frowning at the witch. Not that it's any of your business, but I've been licking my wounds, so to speak. He shrugged, dropping his head. His humility must have struck a chord with Vione as I watched the smug expression fall from her face. But in pure Vione style, she was quick to armor herself against any vulnerability. You should stop moping over this woman who left you in knots. Move on with your life already. Lucas. I feared things were about to get out of hand, and Wastry and S eyes narrowing, and knew he was about to join this squabble. Rowan seemed to pick up on this as well and intervened. Listen, Lucas. I assure you that none of us will betray your confidence. Lucas blew out a breath. All right. I'm choosing to trust all of you. He threw Vione a skeptical glare. Good. We just want to identify who the fuck is conspiring with Quinn. And once we know, I think it will help us get Kyra back. Rowan frowned, and my heart constricted in pain thinking about his baby sister. Yeah, and I want to know who my mother is. I whispered and slapped a hand over my mouth. Lucas glanced at me, and his brow jumped to his hairline. You don't know your mother. I felt my cheeks heat with color. I am sorry. I didn't mean to say that out loud. Don't apologize. Lass. Rowan grabbed my hand and explained to Lucas I was a hybrid daughter of Cormac Quinn and a fairy that I didn't remember. Fiona's father kept her mother prisoner, but she escaped, leaving Fiona behind. Quinn, the bastard, removed Cat and Fiona's wings. The barkeep deposited our order on the bar and moved away, giving us privacy. HS1 evil bastard, Lucas said before taking a sip of ale and digging into his food. Rowan caught Lucas up, everything regarding sex flex. Kyra, my mother, and our quandary with Queen Celestria as we filled our stomachs. It's too bad that Tiana left, Lucas said with a shrug. She might have known your mother. Tiona, an enemy of Queen Celestria when she ran away with me, abandoning the Phi realm. For all I know, she may have begged the Queen to allow her back into the fold. He glanced at me with a sad, looking smile. But Queen Celestria doesn't strike me as the forgiving type. Did she leave anything alluding to where she was going? Rowan asked. Or a Dear John letter explaining why she was leaving you? Vione leaned around me, looking at Lucas. Nope. I just woke up one day to find her gone without a trace. Poof. I doubt she's back in the Phi realm. I told him. Queen Celestria clarified she has her kingdom on lockdown because of the sex flex epidemic. So where would an ostracized fairy go if he knew she couldn't return home? Rowan scratched his chin, appearing to ponder. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Vione let out a dry laugh. I used magic, bringing you to Lucas. And with the snap of my fingers, I could be back with my coven. She shook her head, saying no more. Andrian glared at her, waiting for Vione to continue. Patience, young wolf. She swallowed the last of her ale. If it helps Fiona and Cat, I could find this missing fairy. Tiona, you can. Lucas turned to Vione, eyes wide and in shock. Vione rolled her eyes. Get over this woman already, Lucas. I'm not bringing her back for you. I swear for such a big guy. You act like such a pussy. That's not what I meant. You smart, mouthed witch. She's not my mate and I've learned my lesson. Bring her back for Cat and Fiona's sake. But I want nothing to do with her. He roared and slammed his pint on the bar. Fine. I'll find her. But just remember my earlier warning. Vione hopped down from the bar stool and glanced at Rowan and Rianne. Magic comes at a cost. You'll eventually pay a hefty price. Chapter 29. Finding Tiana Fiona. Rowan paid the barkeep for 2 rooms at the Bitter Nightingale. Since Lucas moved into one after Tiana had ghosted him, We made plans to meet up with the guys in a few hours after cleaning ourselves up, settling in, and resting. The three of us girls scanned around the neat but small room housing to twin beds and a lumpy couch. I could feel the argument coming over who would hit the couch tonight, before the sleeping arrangements turned into an ordeal. I glanced at Kat and Vione. They'll sleep on the sofa tonight. Vione shrugged and unpacked, while Kat grinned at me. I don't mind taking the sofa. If I won't be having a sleepover with the girls tonight. She gave me a saucy wink, making me groan aloud. The sound of Viona's tinkling laughter resonated through the small space. Don't cajole her, Viona. She gets in enough trouble with no endorsements. I rolled my eyes at Kat. I didn't take you for a prude. Fiona. Viona looked at me over her shoulder. Not a prude. Thank you very much. I slammed my hands on my hips and glared at a grinning Kat. But Miss Kitty Cathy was a bit too keen on sharing her affections. I came close to blurting out that Kat had already had a tumble in the sheets with Rianne, but bit my tongue. It didn't seem wise or kind to impart that information, especially since I believed Rianne and Vione shared some type of history. Rianne had a minor past with Kat, and if I was correct about Vione, it could lead to a larger argument than who slept on the couch. We had enough tension dragging us down. I'll leave you two to argue about this. Be back soon. Vione winked and headed for the door. Vampire deception. By Drake Mason and E.Y. Gwet, as an undocumented changeling and forced to pose as a low-level witch. Where are you going? I asked, approaching her. She spun around. You want me to find this missing fairy who dumped Kat's new boy toy? Right. Vione lifted her brows, one hand on her hip, looking frustrated. Kat cackled, and I frowned, shaking my head. Yes, but what? Vione threw her hands up in exasperation. Just relax. I'm getting the lay of the land and need some supplies. I didn't realize before we left town. It'd me to find this fairy. She shrugged. Be careful. Please. I've grown fond of you. I threw her a smile. Believe it or not, I like you too, Fiona. The jury is still out on you. Fairy princess. Vione winked at Kat. But you have excellent taste in men. That Lucas is a tasty-looking morsel for a mangy wolf. Vione lifted one shoulder, throwing me a grin before leaving the tiny cottage. After me and Kat showered, we hit the twin beds and fell asleep, exhausted from the long journey. The creaking sound of the door woke me up, and I rubbed my eyes. Time to wake up. Sleeping Beauty and Snow White. Vione called out, causing Kat to stir. You're back, I said, sitting up to stretch. What time is it? I'm starving. Kat muttered around a yawn. It's time to find Tiana. So, Vione clapped her hands. Kat groaned, throwing the covers back. Must you be a drill sergeant? Hey, you're the lass that always wanted in on the action. Vione lifted one golden brow. Well, today that big bad wolf, Alpha O'Connell, can't make you stay behind. But I will if you don't get your little fairy ass out of bed. Kat saluted the witch and hopped to the floor. Within minutes, we dressed and headed for the pub, finding the guys already there laughing over pints. Glad you could join us. Gels, Lucas yelled, holding up his ale. Fabulous? They seemed drunk. Vione approached the table, shaking her head into a purse she had crossed over one shoulder and between her breasts. This is not the time to get pissed. She sprinkled something into Lucas's beer. I need you to drive because you know the area best. Hey, he shouted and stared down into his mug. What did you put in my ale? He slurred. Drink up. Lads, he pointed at the beer. Lucas shook his head, crossing his arms across his broad chest. Nope, not until you tell me. Vione pointed her index finger at Lucas's hand, and I watched in fascination as he seemed to go into a trance. Lucas lifted his arm and, in slow motion, picked up the glass, draining it dry. That's a good lad. Vion pointed again, and he set the pint back on the table. She whispered some kind of chant, and Lucas shook his head, staring down at his hands. What just happened? He asked, appearing confused. Just sobering you up, mate? Vion took a seat and gestured for us to follow. After eating, we are taking a short drive. She grinned as we stared at her in awe. Even Rian kept his lips shut. For once, Lucas followed Vion's directions on a secluded road away from the seaside village. He drove through a deserted, looking wasteland until we lost sight of all traces of civilization. The ocean running to the left seemed to indicate our direction. The gray, cloudy sky above peppered down snow and covered the road, making it impossible to note any landmarks. When the road opened up, I noticed a gravel driveway. Turn there, Vion said to Lucas, pointing. After what felt like miles, we came upon a small but pretty stone cottage with a garden in full bloom. I shook my head, dismayed. Where did the snow go? Why does it look like spring here? I glanced behind me out the back window and saw the gray sky and snow. As I faced forward, the sky was clear, and flowers and vegetables seemed to mock me. How is this possible? I asked in awe, stepping out of the car and taking in the perfume, scented air. It's magic, Vion said, shrugging. The door of the cottage opened, and a woman hesitated, glaring at us. She looked like a beautiful young woman, though her beauty differed from what one would call traditional. It seemed more natural. I realized this must be Diana, but she appeared very young, almost childlike. Her short, curly hair, as black as coal, accentuated her heart-shaped face. She had dark caramel-colored skin, and her eyes were round and filled with expression, reminding me of a fawn. As we drew closer, I noticed her full pink lips, dark eyelashes, and freckles crossing her upturned nose and cheeks. She stood barefoot in a jumper with an apron tied around her waist. Once we reached the steps, she hugged her body, appearing apprehensive. I smiled, hoping to reassure her, but her gaze lingered on Lucas. Tiana, we come in peace. Lucas kept his hands in his jeans pockets and seemed as nervous as Tiana. These are my friends. He introduced us. It's nice to meet you. She bobbed her head and wiped her hands on the apron. I wasn't expecting any guests. Her eyes jumped from Lucas to me, then Kat, and I noticed them widen. The pleasure is ours. Tiana, Rowan said in a polite voice. Won't you come inside? She stepped into the cottage, holding out her arm for us to enter. Let's go into the dining room, and you can explain this unexpected visit. I watched her confused gaze land on Lucas and his cheeks reddened. Although the cottage appeared homey, I felt the tension between the old lovers. Once we seated ourselves, she stood at the range, hand on a kettle. Would anyone care for tea or coffee? We all accepted her offer. I had always heard that a good cup of tea could fix anything. Tiana served us steaming mugs of tea, chocolate biscuits, homemade scones with clotted cream and jam. We ate in silence, enjoying the delicious treat, and I held my breath, waiting for Lucas to explain why we were there. It's wonderful to see you. You look well, Lucas said, taking a sip of tea. Thank you. You look good. To Tana responded with a strained smile. I know what you must think of me, Lucas, and I'm sorry. Maybe one day you can forgive me. I watched a look of anguish cross her features. I fell for you hard, but I wish to be honest about everything. Lucas's jaw ticked, and he kept his gaze glued to the plate of scones. He remained mute, and it felt like something had sucked all the air from the room. After clearing his throat, he raised his head, staring at Tiana. Perhaps this is a conversation we should have in private. He lifted his brows, glaring at her. Yes, please. This is not for our ears, I thought, realizing I was again holding my breath. The tension building in the cozy room felt stifling, causing sweat to bead along my hairline. Tiana smiled at Lucas and reached for his hand across the table. He appeared hesitant at first before extending his fingers out to hers. Yes, we have much to discuss in private. She gave him a nod. But I need you to understand I wanted a mortal life more than anything else in the world. More than passion. Love, magic, loyalty, or even family. A simple life, removed from the politics and games of Queen Seal's Trias court. But she could never comprehend my fierce desire. When I kneeled down before her and explained what I needed to be happy, she made threats. Horrible threats, including blackmail, regardless if I stayed or not. Tiana shifted her gaze to their intertwined hands. I realized I'd made a grave mistake by confiding in her and needed a way out till I get it. Lucas jerked his hand from her grasp. You use me as your way out. Tiana shook her head. I was already planning to leave. Don't you see? I heard her voice break and felt like I was watching some kind of tragic play unfold. It was just perfect timing, but my feelings for you were genuine. Tiana let out a rush of air and appeared dejected. I didn't come here for this. Tiana, you left. I moved on. Lucas lifted a shoulder, appearing nonchalant, but I watched his anger festering in his expression and rigid body. Tiana leaned back against the chair, folding her arms. Then I Zen. Pray tell, why are you here surrounded by an entourage? It's a long story involving my father and perhaps someone in Queen Seal's Trias court. I said, the words rushing from my lips. Tiana's gaze drifted to me, and I noticed a silver sparkle in her large orbs. I knew you looked familiar. She released a groan, shaking her head. You're the daughter of a fairy, but your father is human. A psychotic maniac. H.E.S. the hunter and scientist. Cormac Quinn. I now felt uncomfortable and wished I'd kept my mouth shut. But in for a penny. In for a pound. Do you know my mother? She nodded. Yes, her name is Immerse. Fiona has a desire to meet her mother. Rowan said, throwing me a reassuring smile. But we need to know if you have any idea who in Seal's Trias court might conspire with Quinn to assist him with creating and distributing the drug. Sex flex. Her brows raised. I'd heard of sex flex, of course, but I left the Phi realm before news spread of the drug. I realize how dangerous it is and will help if I can. Are there any fairies you know well enough to ask? Vion, who had remained quiet thus far, asked. Tiana shook her head. I can't risk Queen Celestria finding me, but I know Immerse well, Tiana confessed, shifting her gaze to me. I'm not sure how much you know about your mother or your aunt, my aunt. I felt my mouth drop open. Her enormous eyes widened, appearing confused, and she stood from the table. Tiana paced around in silence, leaving me with my heart pounding in my ears. Kat's hand found mine under the table and I squeezed it, glad for her support. What do you know? Lucas asked. We came here for information. Please, Tiana. She halted and gave a curt nod before approaching me and Kat. I have personal information about both of you. Do you want to go somewhere private? Tiana glanced between us. No, we have no secrets. I shook my head and glanced at Kat. She's right. We trust everyone here. Kat nodded. You are pure Phi. Tiana stared at Kat. Yes, my mother is Queen Celestria, but that's the extent of our knowledge. Cormac. Fiona's father removed our wings and has experimented with me for years. Tiana gasped. A crestfallen expression crumpled her face. I am so sorry. She kneeled before us, frowning. How do you know each other? The humans I thought were my parents died. They were colleagues and friends of Cormac Hess, so Fiona has been my best friend since I can remember. Kat shrugged. My father took Kat in when her parents died. I finished and glanced at Tiana. After a moment, Tiana shook her head. You're more than best friends. You are cousins. What? My eyes widened, and I felt Kat's grip tighten around my hand. Merlin and Celestria are sisters. I noticed the silver sparkle in her orbs again as my heart felt lodged in my throat, and collective gasps resounded in the room. I should have guessed they were related. Vi said, and made a king sound. How does this help us? Though, we're still at a dead end. Rianne replied. Sign. Not necessarily. Tiana announced and stood with a coy grin. I might be able to help you, but we'll have to wait for nightfall. What do you mean? Rowan inquired, folding his arms over his chest. A tranquil smile spread across her lips. Why don't you guys go into the living room? She strode to the fridge and plucked out 3 beers. The ladies and I will be with you soon. She handed Lucas the bottles, and with frowns of confusion, they did her bidding. She grabbed a bottle of wine and, while uncorking it, I said, I see why you wanted to live like this, here in this peaceful place. She handed us each a glass of red. I bet both of you always felt hot in your own skin. Now it feels that way, I whispered. How come we don't have powers? Kat asked, brows raised. You must try first and put your mind to it. She shrugged and sipped on her wine. It takes a lot of mind control. Vi-on A interjected. She's right. Tiana winked. You've been busy using magic here. Vi-on A winked back. Yes, well, I despise the winter and prefer warmer weather. But I have left most of my magic behind and love living a human life. How can you help us? I blurted out. Do you have anything that belongs to your father? Or something he touched? I nodded and dug in my purse for the infamous necklace. Only a hunter would give his daughter a wolfsbane necklace, Lucas said, startling me. I turned and found the guys back in the dining room. And they say women are nosy. I rolled my eyes. Tiana laughed and held out her hand. She was careful while plucking the necklace from me and laid the pendant on her palm. Then she lifted her free hand over it and whispered something. I observed in shock as the necklace moved in her hand like a gentle tug. She gave a decisive nod and handed it back to me. Oh, yes, I can help you. What are you planning to do? Rowan's expression appeared curious, but I could tell he was gritting his teeth. She gave him a veiled smile. You'll have to wait until tonight when the moon is high. Lucas moved over and kissed Tiana on the crown of her head, but I noticed his gaze on Kat. I've seen Tiana do some amazing things. Please trust her. He glanced at Rowan. She is an expert at finding out secrets, like all fairies. Rowan mumbled. Tiana giggled. Oh, I assure you, you won't be sorry. That careless son of wolves, your heart, and its secrets are safe from me. Though if I were you, I would share more with your mate. I promise she is far more perceptive than you think. She winked at Rowan and I felt the heat rise, settling in my face. So we wait until nightfall. Then, I hoped changing the subject would break the ice, yes. Until nightfall, Rowan replied, staring at his feet. Chapter 30, If You So Desire, Fiona. As night fell, Tiana studied me with a knowing smile, almost like she knew my thoughts and fears. I was still overwhelmed finding out Kat was my cousin and our mothers were sisters. Was my mother like her sister, Queen Celestria? I shuddered at the thought of the cunning and arrogant queen. It's time, Fiona, and everything is ready. Tiana's voice broke my trance. I glanced at everyone congregating in the living room. Lucas held a small box, and we followed Tiana out of her cozy cottage. She led us to her lush and warm backyard, which was illuminated by the glow of a yellow moon above, shining so vast and bright it didn't seem real. I'd never seen a moon light up the night like this one, but then dark shadows sprung up along the path. I inhaled an audible breath, watching Tiana as she whispered something that sounded much like a song. Then she waved her hands in the air, grabbing the shadows surrounding the path, and causing them to evaporate. Wow, I whispered. How do you do that? I'm wondering the same. Kat said, I want to find my powers like this. Tiana turned to us, smiling. We will need the shadows to create a circle. She shrugged, although confused. I let the magical scene unfold and followed until we arrived in the middle of a guard and narrow arch pond sparkling in the moonlight. Do you have everything? Tiana turned to Lucas, yes. Lucas grimaced and glanced down at a cut on his hand. Some of the ingredients were tricky to come by. What a shame. Tiana shook her head. I wasn't sure if she was being sincere or facetious. She took something from the box Lucas held. Have no fear. I will heal your little boo-boo later. After a few chuckles at his expense, we trailed her to the edge of the water. Tian unkneeled by the pond and dropped something like a black, distorted ball. I cowled and discerned its identity, but I witnessed it move. She then sank her hands into the water, and the black object dropped below the water's surface. In an instant, the water turned obsidian and then jet black. What was that? I stood open, mouthed and flabbergasted. The shadows I collected along the path. Tiana wrung her hands over the water. Dark drops, like ink, dripped from her fingers, falling into the twinkling pond. Tian is very skilled at manipulating shadows and darkness, Lucas said, glancing at us. We stood in silence, not clear what that meant. Tian paid us no heed and chanted a whispered song. Each word seemed to fade into the air. She then pulled out an opaque, glistening dagger and sliced her palm. I held back a strangled cry and stared in disbelief, watching her blood flow from the wound. Blood that was silver, not red. As the silvery drops sailed on the water, Tiana held her hand toward me. Give me the necklace. I obliged, and Tiana dabbed something that smelled like rosemary on the necklace. She recited a whispered spell and released it into the pond. The water gurgled, and Tiana rose with a frown. I'm sorry, Fiona, but I need your blood now. I stood beside her and offered my palm. She made a swift cut while I gritted my teeth. Tiana submerged my hand in the inky pond, and I felt trapped, as if the water was alive and draining my veins. The emotion was painful, but it caused me to panic. After a moment, Tiana jerked my hand to the surface. Lucas, give me the staff. He handed her a wooden object. Tiana wandered into the water up to her calves and spun around, drawing a circle on the water's surface with the staff. After 3 times, she called out, Lucas, I need the vial. Tiana leaned down and corked it, holding it above the water. I paused in shock, watching a circle, appearing like blown glass before my eyes. The contents of the vial shot out and rose like smoky steam. She turned to me with a nod. It's time, Fiona. Tiana held out her hand. Stop. Rowan jumped in front of me, glowering at Tiana. What the feck is all this? I won't put Fiona in danger. His apprehension caused me to fret as I glanced between them, not knowing what to do. Relax. Alpha. It's a circle of visions, allowing us to see into her father's memories. It might lead to who's helping him, Lucas said. Remember, Rowan, you wanted Tian as help. There's nothing in it for her. Fine, Rowan said through gritted teeth. Can I go too? Sorry. Naughty Anna shook her head, shooting Rowan a thin smile. But I will keep her safe. You have my word. Rowan stared at me. His lips tugged into a frown. I grabbed his hand and stood on tiptoes, kissing his cheek. It'll be fine. We must trust Tiana. He peered deep into my eyes before nodding. As I moved toward Tiana, I felt his fingers grazing my back. I held Tiana's hand and entered the water, which was icy cold. I glanced over my shoulder at Rowan. Rianne, Lucas, Kat and a grinning Vion A, giving them a wan smile. Tiana coaxed me inside the circle, and just as I was adjusting to the frigid water, I heard loud cries. Then I noticed Tiana didn't look the same. While I could tell she was the same person, her hair was now long and straight. A silver sheen covered her face and her ears were tall and pointy. The silver circle I saw around her orbs earlier covered her irises, and a strange but lovely scent floated from her skin. She smiled, and I watched wings protrude from behind her. Tiana no longer appeared human. She resembled a fairy, but not like it pictured in my head, more archaic. Precarious, yet magnificent and beautiful. Drop into the water. Tiana whispered, I will take care of you during the passage. Her voice had changed as well. It sounded hoarse and husky, but also like silk. I took a deep breath and plunged below the water. The pressure drew me down, and I felt myself sinking. Tiana's hand no longer held mine, and I panicked, thrashing around in the black abyss. I tried to scream, but nothing came out, and I discovered myself in the middle of some strange iridescent bubble that I couldn't describe. Desperate, I kicked around, trying to escape, to no avail until I heard a faint voice. "Please, don't let her die." A voice sounded like a child. "My mom is all I have left." My ears perked to attention, and I stilled, straining to hear more. After a moment, I felt a shift, and the bubble shattered. I whipped my head around, finding myself in a room lit by candles arranged in a circle in the middle of the floor. As I neared the candles, the room spun, and I reached out, grabbing only the surrounding air. I now hovered above the lighted circle, staring down into a mirrored center. The vision of a woman with long ebony hair and a crown of butterflies appeared. Her wide, striking turquoise eyes shone, startling me. I had never seen eyes so bright and green. She stood tall, chin lifted, looking noble, looking noble, with unblemished pearly skin, and I inhaled a sharp breath, realizing this beautiful goddess was my mother. Before I could regulate my breathing, a little boy not much older than 6 appeared, peering at the woman with tears streaming down his face. The sight of him confirmed it was my father. "Please," his pleading voice sounded broken. "Please save my mom, and what will be my reward?" Her tone, like a melody in the wind, warmed my insides. "Anything you want. Please, just don't let her die." The little boy sank to the ground, sobbing, and the image faded. No, I stared around the empty room, desperate for more. The view of a beautiful auburn-haired woman in a hospital bed flashed before my eyes. Her translucent, grayish pallor told me this woman was perishing. I realized I was looking at my grandmother, Cormac's mom. "Do something. Save her." The begging child held a small hand out to the fairy. Immerse took a blade, setting it across the boy's palm, and smeared her fingertips in the blood. "If you so desire," she whispered, and the scene disappeared. The floor beneath me shook and convulsed, breaking the room in half like an earthquake. I felt myself falling. The crack in the floor sucked me in, and I landed with a thud. As I searched around, I found myself in the middle of a lush forest. I rubbed my arms over my body, feeling for injuries, and stood, taking in my surroundings. I heard a hooting noise and spotted a white owl perched in a tree. It flew off, and I followed, watching it land in a tree overlooking a wide stream. And I rushed to the water's edge. I stared into the rushing water. My father's face came into view, appearing like a young man in his 20s with sun-kissed streaks of blonde throughout his copper, red hair, freckles, and broad shoulders. His gaze lingered on the exquisite fairy, who remained untouched by age. "Is your intention to stay?" Cormac stared at Immerse. He captured her hand, and they ventured into the forest. While they wandered off together, I watched her image change. Her skin, once porcelain white, took on a golden glow, and her hair seemed lighter, no longer like a glistening onyx. The emerald-colored eyes, so intense, became more of an ocean green. Immerse now resembled a human, and it felt like I was staring at my own reflection. My father paused, turning to my mother, observing her with such enchantment. After a moment, Cormac captured her face with a longing that left me uneasy, and kissed her. As Immerse kissed him back, I sensed her lack of affection. Her mannerisms seemed distant, much more restrained, and I knew she didn't hold the same desires as Cormac. "Don't leave," he told her. "If you so desire," Immerse said again, this time in a more normal voice. Then the memory receded, and I heard the hoot of the owl, when a fresh image floated before me. Years had passed, and my father looked like a man. Cormac's thick red was prey, and his youthful brown eyes now seemed dull and severe. He studied Merlin, who in turn stared out the window into the forest. From the side, I could see her crying, and a lone tear ran unchecked down her face. My father's jaw ticked, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You can't leave." The words sounded like an order, not a request. Merlin, look at me." He barked, rushing at her. Merlin turned, lifting her gaze, but she appeared to stare through him with lifeless eyes. The vision zoomed in, becoming clearer, and I watched in horror as his large hands grabbed her dainty shoulders. The air left my lungs as I spotted the rope dangling from his hand. "You are mine." Cormac's face creased with anger and hysteria before his mouth crashed hard against hers. While I sensed his passion and lust, Merlin remained still, offering no response. She hung in his grasp like a rag doll. Cormac jerked away in annoyance, taking the rope and tying up her wrist, realizing he could never force her to love him. "You're not leaving, and one day you'll understand you belong to me." She lowered her eyes and studied her hands, bound by the rope, and in a vanishing, throaty voice, she whispered, "If you so desire." Then everything dissolved. The wailing of a baby woke me up, and I raised myself up, peering into the water. I saw Merlin on a cot. Her face was sweaty, and her skin pale, but she smiled, reaching up for the bundle my father held. "Just flawed like you." I flinched, hearing his cold, hard tone. "Please, let me hold her or see her," she pleaded, but her smile faded. He took the infant to a metal table and examined her. She had silver swirls covering her skin and tiny wings on her back. Cormac growled and let out a sigh. "You'll have to extract these blasted wings." In Merlin's face, I recognized misery but also defeat. She dropped her head and turned away, not wanting to see the evil man or the perfect baby she had given birth to. Tears blurred my vision, and after drying my eyes, I was surrounded by darkness. I let out a feral scream with my head thrown back and heard a familiar hoot. "I can't take much more." I glanced over my shoulder at the white owl. As I looked back into the water, my father was lying on the ground in a puddle of blood. Merlin loomed above him, her body glowing. She kneeled beside him and touched Cormac's face, but I noticed a deadly edge in the soft gesture. A sound of footfalls caused Merlin to turn around. I glimpsed a little girl, no older than 3, watching them from the doorway of the room. The small girl's eyes were wide and teary. She rushed to the fairy, arms wide, but before she reached Merlin, Cormac pulled a silver rope, and the little girl crashed to the floor. "You may leave," he said with disgust, placing his tone. "But Fiona remains with me. Mommy. I want my mommy." Merlin closed her eyes, and tears cascaded down like rain. But when she opened them, she held an expression of ice. "If you so desire." She took a few steps, disappearing in the middle of the darkness. Then my vision formed, and I saw my father, many years later, with gray hair. A woman, enveloped in shadows, stood beside him. Her voice sounded fuzzy, and I couldn't understand anything she said. My father huddled before her, trembling. The woman reached out a hand toward him, and the memory fragments cracked like shards of broken glass. "I expect total obedience from you," the woman said, her voice breaking. My father's jaw twitched, and he tightened his fists in fury. "If you so desire." And then it all evaporated. Chapter 31, Princess of Shadows Rowan. After what seemed an eternity, I saw Fiona's head emerge from the water. She coughed and sputtered, gasping for air. Tiana popped up like a lighted beacon and pulled Fiona from the pond. I watched as the circle snapped, causing the pond's surface to regain its natural appearance, and the shadows dissipated. We all rushed to their aid, and I grabbed Fiona. Her wet, shivering body clung to mine. "What happened? Are you hurt?" I wiped a hand down Fiona's dripping hair and inspected her for any wounds. She shook her head, still coughing and trying to breathe. I moved sawdons from her eyes and jumped back as she coughed up water from her lungs. What was all that? Fiona implored in a strangled voice, staring at Tiana. Let's get you dry first. You can ask Tiana questions later. I carry Fiona in my arms to a bench near the pond. Setting her down, Ryan wrapped the towel around her shoulders and turned, handing another one to Tiana. I am not sure. Tiana shrugged with a frown, brushing the soaking strands of her hair away from her face. Someone yanked us from the visions. How? Fiona asked. Tiana shook her head, staring off into the darkness. She seemed perplexed and disturbed by the events. Someone blocked your father's memories. That's all I know. Tiana used the towel, rubbing her drenched head. It had to be someone exceedingly powerful to block your magic, Lucas said, frowning. Tiana grimaced and let out an audible sigh. Come on. Let's go back to my cottage. It's safer and warmer there. I helped Fiona to her feet, coaxing her to lean on my shoulder. My mess without clothes around her waist to further support Fiona on the walk back. Ryan watched Fiona, who strolled in silence beside Lucas. I noticed Kat whisper something in Rhiann's ear before patting him on the back. Not that I was nosy, but if I hadn't been so fixated on Fiona, I'd be interested in knowing what was going on. Because something was going on. The air felt thick and charged with tension. A tension that had nothing to do with the current problems we faced. Once inside, Tiana and Fiona removed some of their wet clothes. Come on, Fiona, Tiana said, taking her hand. Let's go upstairs for something dry to wear. We will be right back and then we can discuss things. Everyone seemed restless, and I noticed the furtive glances between Lucas and Kat. It made me feel more bewildered than ever. Still a holy section. There appeared to be a lingering affection between Lucas and Tiana, despite their negative history. Yet, the way Lucas gazed at Kat said otherwise. The last thing we needed right now was a love triangle. I had enough to worry about. Plus, I knew a storm was simmering between the sworn enemies Rhiann and Fiona. After the girls came downstairs in clean clothes, we seated ourselves in the living room. Tiana, do you have any ideas about what happened? Fiona asked. The only thing that makes sense is that someone experienced and adept at magic manipulated your father's memories. The person who did it wanted nothing revealed beyond what you saw. They don't want us to know who's involved with sex flex, and created a barrier to hide those visions. Can you break it? I asked. As a daughter of the Queen, there are very few fairies more powerful than Kat. Tiana glanced at Kat and shrugged. And even though Fiona is a hybrid, she is a princess too. Fiona and Kat are both granddaughters of a queen. She let out a long sigh. Celestria is the queen, but Immerse is almost as powerful. What we know is it was Fiona or Kat. Tiana paused, allowing time for her words to sink in. That only leaves to fairies strong enough to block Quinn's memories. Do you think it was my mother? Fiona peered at Tiana. Eyes widened, though she shook her head. While your mother is capable, just not powerful enough to block me who? Fiona reared her head back, brow furrowed. Yes, I'm confused. Too, Kat said. I realize we have more important things to discuss, but how can I be one of the most powerful fairies? I don't even know how to use my magic. I understand. Tiana nodded. But just because you don't know how to use your mysticism doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that magic is powerful because you're Epir Seal's Tria's daughter. I interjected and turned to Tiana. But how are you as powerful as Immerse, the Queen's sister? My brow shot to my hairline. Tiana placed her hands over her face and groaned. I suppose it is time to come clean. Ryan cleared his throat, narrowing his eyes. I'd say it's past the time. We trusted you. Tiana, what are you hiding? Lucas jumped to his feet, glaring at Rhiann. Easy now. I won't allow you to berate Tiana. Sit down, Lucas. I threw him a warning glare before frowning at Rhiann. Nobody is going to berate Tiana, so let's all calm down and let her speak. Thank you, Rowan. Tiana folded her hands and shifted in the chair. My father was Immerse and Seal's Tria's older brother. It felt like something had sucked all the air from the room. He was the only son and heir. She shrugged. But someone betrayed and killed him. Immerse was next in line for the throne, and I've always wondered how Celestria became queen. She lifted a shoulder. The whole subject is taboo. Nobody dares to speak of it, fearing Seal's Tria's wrath. I glanced at Fiona, who appeared pale while sitting silent and still. I am Tiana, Princess of Shadows. So you are a cousin? Kid asked, brows touching yes. Tiana nodded, throwing her a tight smile. This is fucking rad as hell, Fiona said, shaking her head. If we could help Fiona and Kat tap into their powers, we would be unstoppable. She grinned, her face beaming. Maybe, but right now, we've hit a dead end. I reached over and grabbed Fiona's icy hand. Her silence was unnerving. Then I felt her squeeze my fingers. Tiana, she said, cocking her head, do you remember that phrase my mother always said to my father? If you so desire. Tiana repeated it in a somber voice. It's like a vow between the fae. For fairies, it holds great influence and significance. But with humans, it's like sealing a pact. We recite the oath as a ritual when we grant wishes. But the wishes or favors come at a price we secure at a later date. So those visions. It was Cormac debating a deal with my mother. Tiana nodded. From what I assumed, your father petitioned her to heal his dying mother. Then he fell in love with Moonlit and continued to summon her. But what did he offer her in return for a child? She tapped her chin and let out a sigh. Sorry, I couldn't be more helpful. Vampire Deception by Drake Mason and E.Y. Dwight. As an undocumented changeling, I'm forced to pose as a low-level witch. I have an idea. Perhaps there is something else you can help with. Fiona glanced at me and her eyes seemed to blaze. Do you have paper and a pen, yes? Tiana rushed to a desk, yanked open the drawer, and returned, handing Fiona a pen and pad. Fiona opened the notebook and started drawing. After a few moments, I realized she was sketching out the layout of the lab in her father's basement, but it looked somewhat different. We've been in a room similar to this, and I recognized it in my father's memories, but the room in the visions was bigger with far more cages. Fiona glanced up at Tiana and held out the drawing. Tiana took it and studied the room. Yes, I remember seeing it in the images from his memory. Well, the witch, well. I have a gut feeling my father has imprisoned the missing creatures of Primordial there. Fiona tapped the paper, pointing to the sketched room. I peered at Tiana, desperation in my eyes. Any chance you could help us find it? My heart fluttered thinking about Kyra, but bastard Quinn might have her stashed there in a cage. Tiana frowned, dashing my hopes. I can't, but I know who can. A coy grin tugged at her lips. She stood and strode beside the chair where Fiona sat, rolling her eyes. I've heard a rumor about a certain witch who specializes in finding objects. Throughout Ireland and the UK, there is no one more qualified than her. If anyone can help you find that room, it's Fiona. Tiana, the Princess of Shadows, giggled. Why didn't you speak up? Rian yelled, glowering at his nemesis. Bite me, wolf pup. Fiona crossed her arms, returning Rian's glare. I just heard about this hidden room mere seconds ago, and I told you from the beginning. I'm not keen on dealing with Cormac Quinn. H.S. an evil bastard. He is my little sister. Which? Rian seethed, jumping from the couch and stalking toward Fiona. In the blink of an eye, Rian sailed backward through the air, crashing into a wall. A framed picture fell, landing on his head. With a grimace, Fiona whispered, Oops. She turned to Tiana. Sorry. Ryan stood, rubbing his head. You owe me that apology. I swear I've ever met a bigger. Stifle it. Wolf, or I'll send you slamming into that cold fucking pond. Fiona rose from her chair, advancing toward Rianne. Enough. Enough from both of you, I roared, rising to my full height and glowering at them both. Viola placed a hand on her hip. Fine. If he would have given me a moment. I was going to say that I'm in deep to back out now. I would love to help find that torture chamber. She stuck out her tongue at Rianne. Will you come with us? To Lucas asked Anna. I wish I could, but I can't. As much as I love it here, I'm like a captive in this cottage, she revealed with a frown. If she leaves, Queen Celestria could sense it, and come after her. Viola replied. The expression on Iana's face showed remorse, but the witch threw her a smile. Don't worry, fairy princess. I'm sure we can handle it. I've got these 2 fairy princesses and a couple of werewolves. Perhaps I can help coax them with their magical powers. Viola shrugged. Okay, we have a plan. Tiana, thank you for everything, but we need to go. I threw her a grateful smile. It's so late. Why don't you stay and rest up? Tiana offered, but I declined no. We'd better get back. I want to find this roommate. Hopefully, my sister. Tiana nodded, understanding our haste, and moved to Fiona, taking her hands. Please be careful and don't be a stranger. I would love to see you all again. She hugged Fiona and Kat. I can't tell you how happy I am to meet my cousins. Tiana turned to Viola. And it's nice to put a face with a name. I've heard so much about you. Viola. I watched the fierce, tiny witch hug Tiana. Well, I guess she can be affectionate after all. The thought made me grin. We will come back to visit, Fiona said. Who knows? We may need your aid again. I would love that. Tiana led us out of the cottage. Promised to keep in touch. Tiana yelled as we got into the SUV. She remained waving goodbye with a wary expression. We will. I yelled out the window before turning to Fiona. Are you sure you're all right? Fiona nodded, staring out the window. I drove thinking about everything we had learned. The 10-hour drive, cooped up in a small space, filled this time with silence, made matters worse. Right when I was going bonkers, I saw the line that defined Dublin. By then, the weariness and stress had taken their toll, and I looked forward to a good night's sleep. However, it seemed our night was not over, quite the contrary. When we arrived at the house, after spanning the restricted circle that marked off our territory, I encountered an unwelcome shock. A familiar woman stood in the driveway. She appeared tall and enraged, with opaque skin and long white, blonde hair that fell almost to the pavement. Well, I've been waiting for you, declared Queen Celestria as soon we pulled up. Her smile looked precarious, telling me that her presence here would be anything but cordial. Duck down, Cat, I whispered and hit the steering wheel with fury. Viola, can you hide her? May Cat disappear? Got it. Then Viola murmured a chant that sounded like gibberish, and the car filled with misty gray smoke. I believe you have someone that belongs to me. Celestria placed her long, thin hands on her hips in a challenging stance. Shit, Ryan whispered from the back seat, announcing my exact sentiment. You will hand over my daughter, or else tolerate the consequences, insisted the Queen of Fi.